Our third panel addresses one of the most critical issues for regional stability, the future of relations across the Taiwan Strait. As China intensifies pressure on Taiwan through military, economic, and political means, policymakers and experts have called for strengthened deterrence, increased diplomatic engagement, and heightened preparedness. This conversation will explore the strategic calculations of Beijing and Taipei, the role of allies and partners, and how democratic institutions can navigate a rapidly evolving security environment. Our panelists are Mr. Randall Schreiber, Chairman, Institute for Indo-Pacific Security; Ms. Rui Matsukawa, Member of the House of Councilors, Japan; Professor Satoru Mori, Keio University. Moderating the discussion is Mr. Masakatsu Ota, Senior Editorial Writer at Kyodo News. Please welcome them to the stage.
Okay, everybody is ready for this session. Welcome to Tokyo, especially for foreign specialists and the foreign visitors here. Also, thank you for participating in this afternoon session for all of your distinguished guests today. We have three panelists today, and the Randy Schreiber, he's the anchor of the Japan and the U.S. Security Alliance, and we have known him a lot, and he's a former official. And next to Randy is Ms. Matsukawa. She's a Diet member. She used to be working for foreign Ministry of Foreign Affairs, former diplomat, and she's very, it's a well-talented and well-known on this area, foreign policy issue. Also, another respectful guest is a speaker. It's the Mori Sensei from Keio University. Also, he's a former diplomat, and he's also capable and also very well-known, and also he's very respected figure in this diplomatic field, in this not only this town but also all over the world. I'm a Masa. Just the laid-back journalist, spending 30 years on the writing nuclear policy issue and also diplomacy, and I'm a little bit obsessed with the current situation in this town in Tokyo, because the new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, she's gonna call a snap election maybe sometimes in the next week. Why at this moment? She took office only 3 months so far. But she didn't indicate any, kind of a snap election until the end of the last year. But this morning, I'm sorry, it's early this year, maybe she might have changed her mind, and she needs some snap election because her government is, it's especially the lower house. Lower house is a minority ruling party. It's upper house is still, minority ruling party, and. Is that right? Upper house is a minority. Lower house is a slight majority right now. So one of the reasons why she's going to call a snap election, my guess is one of the reasons is the situation here in Asia, worsening the environment, security environment here in, surrounding Japan. So she want to demonstrate, she want to prove herself as a strong leader, by winning a landslide victory on the coming election, maybe February 8th. So this situation in Japan, domestic political situation here in Japan, is deeply related with what's going on surrounding Japan. So this panel is the session title is China, Taiwan, and the Future of Regional Stabilities. I want to propose 5 or 6 questions at the starting of this debate, focusing on the security situation in this region. Question number 1. Over the past few years, we have seen a marked increase in Chinese military buildup, economic and political pressure on Taiwan. What is the Japanese response to this growing escalation? That's question number 1. Question number 2. Stability across the Taiwan Strait is directly linked to Japan's own security. How do policymakers in Tokyo currently assess the risks posed by the rising tension, and how has this assessment evolved in recent years? Question number three is how has Taiwan's relationship with Japan evolved as the Chinese pressure has intensified? Question number 4, how does Japan's geographic proximity to Taiwan shape Japanese strategic thinking and defense planning? Question number 5, what roles do the United States, Japan, and other partners play in shaping Beijing's strategic calculations? That's a prepared 5 question. One more extra question is what's going on the other side of the world, especially West Hemisphere. National security strategy just recently published by the Trump 2.0 administration, focusing on our territory, our backyard, West Hemisphere. What we have seen since the beginning of this year is a military operation against Venezuela. What's the strategic implication of this military operation? What's the implication of this military operation against Venezuela into Taiwan Strait's security? That's question number 6. So let me, repeat question number 1 and question number 1. Over the past few years, we have seen a marked increase in China's military, economic, and political pressure on Taiwan. What is the Japanese response to this growing escalation? That's question number 1. Who's going to initiate the discussion? Whoever? Maybe Mori-sensei?
Yes. First of all, I want to thank the McCain Institute and the International House of Japan for inviting me to this conference. It's a real privilege to be able to speak alongside my colleagues and distinguished audience. So to answer Ota-san's question about how Japan's been responding to this China's escalating pressure on Taiwan, I think I would point to some diplomatic efforts as well as efforts to bolster Japan's deterrence vis-a-vis China. On the diplomatic side, I think there are 2 things that the Japanese government has been doing. Number 1, Japan has been making efforts to insert particularly 2 kinds of phrases in various bilateral and unilateral joint statements. Namely, number 1 is about stressing the importance of the peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait. This has been a sort of a persistent Japanese diplomatic effort on many fronts. And number 2, also to sort of insert the phrase that says Japan opposes unilateral change to the status quo by force and by coercion. And so these 2 diplomatic efforts have been used to sort of garner support and signal Japan's intention to oppose this kind of Chinese pressure on Taiwan. Also, Japan has been quietly supporting Taiwan's participation in international organizations at the working level. And I think this has occurred in WHO and also ICPO, or the Interpol, and other various international organizations. So those are 2 diplomatic efforts that Japan has been doing. On the side of defense or deterrence, I think pretty much what Japan has been doing over the past several years has all been sort of undertaken with the Taiwan contingency in mind. And this is basically about deterring China. Bolstering Japan's defense capabilities by identifying 7 capability areas has been an effort that was initiated back in December 2022 with the last revision of the 3 strategic documents. This has been a focus area of Japan's effort to sort of deter China. And I think some of the focus areas would be counter-strike capabilities, anti-ship missiles on the weapon system side. And also, there has been effort to establish what they call the JJOC, or Joint Operational Command, which is aimed to operationalize and unify Japanese service coordination at a much more effective level. And lastly, on posture, force posture, Japan has been deploying missile units to the southwestern islands, like Ishigaki, Miyako, and Yonaguni. And they're also establishing munition depots. So all these efforts on the deterrence side is actually a response to this kind of heightening escalation on the part of Chinese against Taiwan. But my sort of not a concern, but sort of an issue that we probably have to address is, I don't think we have a sort of a coordinated counter-coercion strategy yet on the gray zone. Traditionally, I think the United States has focused on the nuclear area and the conventional area, and Japan has been focusing on the conventional area and the gray zone area around Senkaku Islands. But I think there needs to be a sort of a much more sort of unified effort, not only between Japan and the United States, but also hopefully from other partners, to sort of enhance Taiwan's resilience to counter China's multifaceted coercion campaign. So that's an issue that I think we still need to work on. So I'll stop there. Yeah.
Thank you, Mori Sensei. His talk, his mentioning about the Taiwan Strait, and just remind me of my discussion, my interview with the former Prime Minister Suga. Former Prime Minister Suga, he went to Washington spring 2021, I guess, on the first time meeting with Mr. Biden, President Biden, and he had a deep thought. He had some concern because he was wondering whether it is good for Japanese security or not in the long run, whether we can put the language first time on the joint statement of the summit meeting, peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait. It's a defense minister and the foreign minister and the some strategic document among the two allies, peace and stability of Taiwan Strait. This word is already phrased in before, but the first time Mr. Suga mentioned this phrase clearly in front of the President of the United States. So that's the reason why he confessed to me he got some concern. United States are far away from Japan, far away from this region. We don't want to see any war. We don't want to see any fire in this region. So how, if I made a kind of a clear, remarks about the emphasizing on the stability, peace and stability of the Taiwan Strait, which would have a deep implication to this region. That's the reason why Suga had a deep thought about this sentence. I just want to ask you, Randy-san, Mori-san mentioned we are still in the middle of the progress. Maybe we are still in premature to a kind of a joint coordinate effort to counter strategy against the gray area in this region. Do you want to add some comment on that?
Sure. Well, the gray zone is very challenging by design. I mean, the Chinese activities are designed to coerce, pressure, intimidate Taiwan, but below a threshold that would bring about a military response. There are things we can do. We could, for example, practice counter-blockade operations. So Japan and the United States could practice a corridor from the port of Geelong to the Yonaguni Island area. Mm-hmm. We could employ cost imposition, which is not necessarily always on point. So the Chinese do something that is maybe a step beyond what they'd done before in the gray zone, and we do something like visibly deploy elements of the joint training team to Taiwan. So there's a cost imposition, even if it's not directly on point. But it is challenging. Mm-hmm. We call it gray zone now. Some people have called it salami slicing. Some people have called it boiling the frog. I mean, it's tough by design, and it's one of the reasons it's been very difficult to counter.
Yeah, thank you very much. Matsukawa-sensei, if you want to add any comment to what Mr. Morrison said and Randy-san said and regarding the Japanese response to this growing escalation.
Yeah, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this, very distinguished forum. It's a great honor, and together with the friends I respect most, all three of you. And with regards to the situation, I think the Japanese politicians and also the Japanese government has a keen awareness of the increasing, rapidly worsening the situation around Japan. Not just China on the sea lane, but North Korea is developing the missiles and nuclear capabilities, and then they are actually cooperating with Russia and China, Russia and North Korea. So these are the very different security situation that Japanese government has to respond. So as a politician in the Japanese diet and dealing with security affairs, we have deep concern over two things. One is the environment, as I described. The other thing is the way of the warfare has changed a lot during, especially we've been witnessing that in the Ukraine war. Now that the drone or UAVs are attacking and sinking the Russian huge vessels. And then whether Japanese military posture and the defense capability is responding to this new way of warfare is, I think we have a lot of room for the improvement. And the other thing is about, with regards to Taiwan, I think it's not just Taiwan or Ukraine warfare, new way of warfare. Another aspect is the cognitive warfare is also taking place before the actual military operation starts. So how to respond to the cognitive warfare, the influence operation on the internet, or maybe the influential operation vis-a-vis the key persons in the country, is also another thing we have to tackle. And I tried, I have been participating in a couple of the Taiwan contingency simulations. And then the gray zone is really difficult, because when to start, when to respond, how to respond is always very, very difficult political question. So we have to be very much prepared. And then this preparation cannot be just done by Japan. Japan, US alliance should, as Mori Sensei pointed out, we have to have a better coordination, not just operation, but responding to gray zone phases. And the other thing we have found, and then try to tackle in the coming revision of the 3 documents, National Security Strategy, GOJ has decided to make the revision 2 years earlier than we planned originally because of the new situations that I described we found in the Ukraine warfare. Another huge agenda we have to tackle is supply chain. Whether it comes to Taiwan or any other, I think, emergencies, what we have found is we have to have a good supply chain or the production capability as of your own, both in times of the warfare. And then unless you can be supplied with the good, the bullets or the missiles, you cannot really fight. Ukraine has a lot of difficulty of, the increasing the capability and to respond because of the shortage of the bullets and missiles. So these 2 agenda, new way of warfare, cognitive, and also the UAV and the drones and the small, huge number of the equipments actually is necessary to respond to the big vessels or the aircrafts or the tankers. So I think when we think about whether Taiwan or others, these new response capability we have to develop on our own, plus together with allies and partners. That's the big agenda. That's why next national security strategy will have a lot of emphasis on the defense industry, enhancements of the defense industry, and also the export of the Japanese defense equipments to partner countries.
Could you, if you may, could you add some comment on this change of the export rule? I mean, military equipment. Can you a little bit elaborate on that for
Sure.
foreign visitors, please? What's going on inside the ruling party right now?
Yeah, I think these are, today's listeners are pretty will be, known for, the experts on the security issues. But that's being said, 5 categories of the allowed exports categories. This is the restriction on Japanese military equipment export. So in short, sweeping or the assistance or the reconnaissance, and these 5 categories are allowed categories for the export. Otherwise, you can't export our radars or the radar is within the category. But if it is, let's say, take an example, if Japanese government wants to export frigates to the Philippines, we have to take off the ammunitions and the bullets and then the missile capabilities from the frigates to export to the Philippines because it's not within the category. That's absurd. We have to enhance the capability of the Philippines. If the Philippines can protect its own sea lanes in front of them, that will enhance the sea lane protection. So it's good for Japan, good for the Philippines. But we under the present export control rules, we cannot do that. So now that under the Takaichi government, we've been continuing this discussion for a long time, but it's the final stage that we are going to abandon and abolish these absurd rules. Oh, this is recorded.
Okay, not the final decision yet, right?
Not final decision, but we are working on it, and I think it's really an important thing for increasing the Japanese defense capability as a whole.
Okay, thank you very much, Matsukawa Sensei. She explained the whole comprehensive approach to be done by a Japanese government, and I would like to ask both gentlemen, assessment of the current effort by the Japanese government, which was explained by the Matsukawa-san, Randy-san first. What's the assessment? It's enough for, Japanese effort to tackle this issue and the change of the war and the new type of war and the gray zone and the, the restriction.
Yeah. Well, if I were a professor, it wouldn't be an A, B, C, or D. I would say it's an incomplete.
That's what I need.
I would say it's an incomplete. We need to see really the implementation phase of all this. I mean, Japan has taken some bold steps and taken some necessary reforms, but how is this going to be implemented? Going from counter-strike capabilities to working that into concepts of operation and doctrine and working that into allied concepts of operation for particular scenarios. There's a lot of work ahead, but I would say as an American, as an ally of Japan with great interest in not only the defense of Japan, but Taiwan and other regional contingencies, Japan is definitely moving in the right direction. And, I think given where we were when I started working on these issues in the 1990s, it's really light years ahead. And I think there are many in Japan that deserve credit for this. Prime Minister Abe certainly breathed a lot of life into this, and I'm encouraged of the direction, but we've got work ahead.
Thank you. What's your scorecard, Mori Sensei, to Matsukawa-san's statement?
I don't have a scorecard, but like Shriver-san, I think the Japanese government is fully aware of what needs to be done. So we know what road to go down. It's a matter of speed also. And I think during this year, the 3 strategic documents are going to be revised. And I think a lot of the outstanding issues that needs to be addressed will be addressed in this process. And I think it was recently recorded, for example, that the Japanese Ministry of Defense is apparently going to stand up a new office devoted to this defense of the Pacific, strengthening defense of the Pacific, which is about reinforcing existing ports, airfields, and other infrastructure so that JSDF and US forces will be able to better sort of deploy during crises and contingencies. So efforts like that are now being sort of examined and being articulated within the government. And I hopefully will see that being rolled out through this year. And the important thing is the budget that will have to sustain those efforts. Having just a strategy, concept of operation is very, very important, but I think it needs to be sustained by a necessary budget. And I think there's widespread recognition that 2% of GDP is now the floor, not the ceiling. And so I'm not quite sure whether they will aim for 3.5 or 5 or whatever, but probably 3.5 will be a sort of probably an appropriate target level, I would say. But I think the MOD would rather see this issue as a sort of a capability-based issue, not just focus on the numbers, but actually look at the real strategy, concept of operations, and also roles, missions, and capabilities between the United States and Japan, and identify what actual capabilities are required to deliver what they call combat credible deterrence, right? So I think those works are underway. So I think in that respect, I think I would give A+ for the process, and we'll have to wait for another grade as a final exam at the end of the year. So yeah, I'll put it that way. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Just listening to what these gentlemen, ladies, very superb, answers and the response, and the new question conjure up on my mind. Deterrence, of course, is based on the capability, military capability, backed by the diplomacy, and also willingness to use some force at the time of the contingency by a top leadership. Other element for strengthening the deterrence is, I think, a public acceptance. We are in Japan, we are a democratic nation. I'm a big fan of the Japanese constitution, and many Japanese public still support Constitution Article 9 especially. So Matsukawa Sensei, what the change of the dynamism among the, the public debate and the including the media or SNS, and have you seen any change change of the tide among these public debate regarding the, increasing the Japanese military build-up and the strengthening the deterrence? Have you observed any change of the, public acceptance for past maybe 10 years?
Oh yes, if you take 10 years ago and the present is almost like a different age. Seriously, I think the more Japanese public are aware the worsening environment around Japan in terms of the security, and also all the people are watching what's happening in Ukraine. I think people have more acceptance of increasing the military budget and also increasing the capability of the Japanese defense, and also with regards to the constitutional reform too. I mean, now that we have different parties are coming up, like our do-it-yourself party or others, more, if you compared with 10 years ago, the Japanese politics and the present, more parties are supporting actually the revision of the Article 9 of the Constitution, including of course, the LDP and the Ishin Party, how do you, Reconstruction Party?
Sure.
And then the Kokumin Minshito is, how do you pronounce?
National Democratic Party of Japan.
Well, yeah, National Democratic Party, and then the Do-It-Yourself Party. I mean, count four. I mean, before it was just LDP. So compared with the past, I think the Japanese general public's perception about strengthening Japanese defense capability, or like not just defense, but as a resilience, economic security, food security, energy security, and then like our rare earths and other resources. I mean, overall, I think the Japanese public is aware and support making our nation strong, if I make it short.
I see. Randy-san, do you feel the dramatic change among the Japanese public, perception regarding threats, military threats?
Well, yeah, as an outside observer watching
please.
Japan, it sure seems as though there's been a dramatic change, and I think that's mostly threat-driven and global events. You might have thought that it was the Chinese overreaction to Nancy Pelosi's visit that would spur Japan into action to do things like double its defense budget, but it was really the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because it seemed to take the unthinkable off the table and make it very real, make it very thinkable. And so I think the combination of Chinese provocations and coercion in the region, very much directed at Japan in certain instances. When you look at the East China Sea and the Senkaku areas, the Russian invasion of Ukraine, I certainly sense a change here. It doesn't mean that people are eager for a fight, or that they necessarily want to return to sort of a militarized society. That's
right.
Which is what the Chinese are claiming. It's that they want to be prepared for worst case scenarios and be prepared in a way that actually upholds deterrence and prevents conflict, not brings it about.
Mori sensei, Matsukawa sensei mentioned the potential change of a constitution, revision of the Article 9. What's the prospect of the future argument inside Japan? How the general public respond to this proposal by the ruling party, and what's going to be discourse of the future debate regarding this change of a constitution?
Yes. Right now, I think in the area of national security, the current interpretation, the new interpretation under Article 9, basically allows the Japanese self-defense force to operate pretty effectively in the Indo-Pacific. So that's all good. I'm not quite sure what kind, how much momentum will build up in the coming years. But I think to speak about Japan's sort of a consensus on national security policy, I think there have been traditionally three pillars. Number one is the strengthening of Japan's own defense capability. Number two is strengthening of the Japan-US alliance. And number three is the strengthening of cooperation with like-minded states. So these three pillars are the actual center consensus in Japanese public opinion. And to be honest, I think President Trump's unconventional approach to foreign affairs has sort of shaken, to some extent, the confidence in the US-Japan alliance component. But I think there is a serious effort on the part of Japan to sort of recalibrate our relationship so that it fits and we meet this new definition of what constitutes a good ally in the eyes of President Trump. And quite honestly, I think President Trump has probably two big metrics to judge who constitutes a good ally. Number one is whether an ally brings economic benefit to the United States. And this is about trade, addressing trade imbalances. It's also about investing in the United States to boost manufacturing. And it's also about cooperating on technology transfer regulations. Right? So on these three areas, I think Japan has been working very well. We concluded the economic agreement with the United States last summer. Right? This year, the test is going to be on the security side of things. And I think President Trump wants to see US allies have enough defense capability so that the United States can defend US allies at an acceptable cost and risk. And number two, he wants to see US allies purchase a significant amount of US defense articles, right? So these two items will be probably put on the agenda this year. But I think the Japanese government will, I'm pretty optimistic that the Japanese government will be able to tackle these two tasks this year. And this will allow to sort of redefine the Japan-US alliance in a new formula. And if that diplomacy and negotiation between US and Japan goes well, I think there will be a sort of a new setting or footing for the two countries to move ahead and get rid of some of the uncertainties that have been coming out from the United States. So hopefully that will culminate in a more solidified three pillars that I mentioned. And there will still be efforts on the part of Japan to increase its own defense capabilities. And I think there will be renewed effort to sort of enhance cooperation with like-minded countries as well. So reinvigorated effort on the first and the third pillar, combined with a new approach on the US-Japan alliance pillar, will help the Japanese government solidify its new national security strategy. And this is critically important because if we don't have that new consensus, the public opinion is going to split into several directions. Number one, it could go in the direction of let's have a Northeast Asia comprehensive order, which is a code word for appeasement of China. The second one is very hard right, which is nuclear armament, independent nuclear armament. And the third direction is I don't know what to do direction, right? So you don't want to have these, the public opinion split into four different directions, because if you have that kind of direction, you will not be able to get enough funding get support for national funding on those defense budget and other security-related budgets. So I think that's the critical issue, which is at the nexus between domestic politics and national security.
Thank you very much, Mori Sensei. Such a well-organized explanation to us, and it's very, very educational for me too. And Matsukawa Sensei, Mori Sensei mentioned the unconventional, approach to be taken by Trump 2.0, and also he emphasized that we need, get rid of the uncertainty for, future alliance management and the, creating a new architecture, new fora. So from the perspective from the diet, as a diet member, do you still have some concern about the, these type of unconventional, unconventional approach to be taken by Mr. Trump, and the do you have still, worry about the lot of uncertainty to be created by Mr. Trump? Honestly, please.
Well, honestly, I think we have already passed the stage of worrying about the uncertainty. I think Mr. Trump, President Trump is an unconventional leader, but I think what he has been achieved or doing is, I think some parties really, I think, benefiting Japanese security. The other part is uncertain. So as an ally, what we have to do is, I think, consistent. We need U.S. engagement in this region to deter China or North Korea. And therefore, U.S.-Japan security alliance needs to be, Japan-U.S. alliance needs to be strong. And we have to make, as Mori Sensei pointed out, I think to make Japan-U.S. alliance strong, Japan needs to make its own utmost efforts to strengthen ourselves. That is good for Japan, but also good for the strengthening the alliance. So that's, I think, very clear. And what that's GOJ is steadily doing. I think we've been 8+ we receive. By the end of the year, I hope Mori Sensei will give us 10+. And then The other thing is we also have to be prepared because it's uncertain. We know it. Whether we need a strong alliance, and we need, if the U.S. is uncertain, we need even more partners like South Korea or Australia or the Philippines or the UK. I think we need to strengthen the more reliable allying partners even more, and we need to deepen the relations. And not just defense, but economic security or supply chain cooperation, or maybe the resource cooperation in many ways. And so it's been consistent with what we've been doing, but I think we have to be more, I think we have to deepen it. And then, what President Trump did in the Venezuela operation, it's of course a very unconventional operation, but I think like Kim Jong-un, other authoritarian leaders now have received a very clear message in many ways, and I think it has some effect of increasing the deterrence.
I see. It's a positive side. What's the negative side of the Venezuela operation by U.S.? I mean, the implication, security implication to this region, Randy-san.
Well, I mean, I could dodge this and say it's too soon to tell the full implications. I think in the near term, it's a diversion of attention and energy and resources from our top civilian leadership. They're going to want to get this right. They're in the process of defining homeland security in a way that is hemispheric, and they think about homeland security. It also means border security, immigration. It means counter-narcotics. The question is this a true inflection point? Is this a perturbation? Is this something that is actually going to be an expanded view of how we compete with China? As my colleague Dan Twining pointed out earlier today, much of this, actually there's a China piece to all of this, including where was China getting a good portion of its oil? It was from Venezuela. Right. So, I think a little bit soon to tell. But I would say, the interesting thing about the unpredictability, or I think you said unconventional, thank you for using that very benign description. Unconventional. We sometimes called it other things. But the interesting thing in the Taiwan context is it actually kind of returns us to strategic ambiguity with a very Trumpian flavor to it. But, it was actually President Biden, not once, not twice, not three times, but four times said we will defend Taiwan, which was the aberration of U.S. policy. Now we're back to ambiguity with Trumpian characteristics. But if you look at what he's doing, the administration is doing, security assistance to Taiwan, absolutely. We just made an $11 billion congressional notification, a very significant one. Posture initiatives, they continue. We had our largest Balakaton exercise, and we're pushing new ectosites into northern Luzon. The work in the Southwest Island chains was already mentioned. Modernization of the force in ways that are going to be appropriate for the China challenge. Coming, slowly, maybe. So there's a lot that I see that I can be encouraged by. Does the unconventional drift into the truly bizarre? I mean, Greenland comes to mind, but I think at this point, I would say, we're sort of on track for a traditional approach to bolstering deterrence. Some of these aspects are slower coming online, and but I think, at this point, if you're sitting in Zhongnanhai and you see Venezuela operation, and you see what's going on with all of his visits with leaders, Takeichi, with new President Lee. We've defied gravity. We have a progressive president in South Korea and a conservative Republican president, and they're getting along. And they're talking about strengthening the alliance with shipbuilding and other kinds of initiatives. So I don't think you're taking a lot of comfort in Zhongnanhai right now.
I see. Thank you very much. Let me move to more focusing on the Taiwan issue. And during the lunch session, General Petraeus emphasized what's the key, what's the most important. Just let make the Xi Jinping think about it twice. Not today, not today, not today. Just to make him think twice all the day. Maybe we have to continue this process 10 years. More than that, maybe. I think that's the best way to prevent any war in this region. So we discussed about the increasing our side of deterrence, but I'm afraid there's some missing point. That's a strategic communication with China. especially Prime Minister Kishida and the Prime Minister Suga and they could, or even Mr. Ishiba, and they could meet Xi only once a year, at the ASEAN Forum or G20, and no direct, coming over to Japan, going over to Beijing. So it's a kind of I think, a big missing point. Still we have to try to reshape his strategic thinking. We cannot do that. Of course, and we cannot do that from the bottom of the each diplomat, they are making hard efforts, and the scholar, they are making a hard effort. But the most effective way to do so is the top level of the strategic communication. So I think that's a missing part, big missing part. What do you think about the, Mori Sensei, Diet member, each year, they are going to Taiwan, more than 100 Diet member going to Taipei. But only 10 or 5 Diet members going to Beijing. And the Prime Minister, Japanese Prime Minister, meet Xi Jinping only once a year. How do you assess this situation?
I think we'll just have to use that once a year as a good opportunity to send out a signal. But otherwise, not to sort of miscommunicate. But what is important, I think, still, is to sort of communicate our intention to deter China also. When we talk about deterrence of China, I think what we want to signal to China, I think there are 3 strategic messages. Number 1, China cannot win a short, sharp war. Number 2, China cannot prevail in a protracted conflict. And number 3, China, if it advances its military buildup, it will be met with multinational balancing. So it's not worth it. So those are the 3 messages that we want to send to China, and be clear that using force to unify Taiwan is not in their best interest. And all the efforts that occur between Japan and the United States in the defense and the deterrence realm should be aimed to sort of send those messages clearly to China. But as you say, this doesn't mean that we should shut down diplomatic communications. No, we should continue as best as we can, not to sort of send the wrong message. Yes.
Randy-san, do you want to add any comment to what Mr. Mori said?
Yeah, I'm for talking to China. As Churchill supposedly said, it's better to ja than war, right? Our track record of diplomacy with China resulting in agreements that stick is not great, but I think it's worthwhile in terms of signaling, in terms of really clearly laying out our interests and what our aspirations are for not only U.S.-China relations, but what we want China's behavior to look like in the region in a free and open order. I would say there's another missing communication link, though. The Chinese haven't talked to Taiwan's elected leaders for going on 9-10 years now, since Tsai Ing-wen was elected in 2016. Before that, with Ma Ying-jeou, they did have cross-strait dialogue, but now the duly elected leaders, now from Tsai Ing-wen to Lai Ching-te, they haven't had cross-strait dialogue. That's the problem. That's the problem, that the Chinese are turning to the military means to put pressure and coercion on Taiwan. So that's a missing communication link. And I think you mentioned a lot of Diet members going to Taiwan. We have members of Congress that go to Taiwan, but we don't talk at high levels from either of our administrations. In fact, this year we shut down a transit that Lai Ching-te had expressed interest in conducting through the United States. I think we should enhance our own communication with Taiwan. So I think this is a real missing piece. We're up here all talking about Taiwan, and we have our Taiwan friends in the audience listening, but they need to be more part of the conversation on a more regular basis, because they have a pretty significant stake in this.
Okay, Matsukawa-san, if you want, so how would you tackle against these missing communication points, and what your approach as a current Diet member who is very influential on the foreign policy making, and what's your view and what's your opinion?
Thank you. That is exactly the missing link. I do think we need a better communication with China. So I had a really high hope for the Prime Minister Takaichi and then the President Xi's the first summit meeting at the site of the ASEAN summit. And it went really well. So unfortunately afterwards, we have some struggle over the relations, but I do think leadership needs to talk, especially when we have a difficult problems. And Japan and China is very close geographically. we've been geographically close forever. So it's very, very necessary for us to have a leadership communication. And also if the leadership, that's very important, but not just that. I think the Diet members, politicians needs to have a better friends or the, the persons who can talk to in China. And otherwise, we will misunderstand each other. We have a disagreement, we know it. But I mean, to what extent, what is the red lines? We need to have a better communication. Even the US and China has a communication. And then these two big countries are recognizing each other, the biggest strategic competitor, but yet they do communicate. And I think Japan, being a close neighbor, has a long history, needs to have a better communication. And I think two to tango. So, maybe Japan needs to make efforts, but China needs to make efforts too.
Right.
So one thing, unfortunately, the events didn't follow through, but Prime Minister Takaichi and the President Xi had an agreement that we need to establish a stable, constructive relationship. And to do so, we need to have all levels communications. And I think it's one idea for Japanese, let's say the LDP, send some mission to China. And I hope, this is my hope, with coming election, if the LDP wins a very comfortable majority, and then show to the world that this administration will stay very stable and last long, and you better respond. So I think it's one occasion that after the election and before the President Trump's visit to China, one idea is I think we will send a mission of the politicians. We have a more flexible posture.
Yeah, right.
to visit Beijing and then to send a message that Japan is not trying to change Chinese regime or anything. We're not trying to change the status quo, but we want to maintain the peace in the region. We don't want contingents in Taiwan, or definitely not by the military force. But we have areas where we can cooperate, maybe, and then let's talk. That's, I think, the message we can send.
Thank you very much. And last deepest discussion between the Japanese leader and the Chinese leader, that was taken place, as far as I remember, taken place in the 2019. I think that was the summer, at the time of the G20 summit meeting in Osaka. We had a great lunch this afternoon. We ate a sukiyaki. Mr. Abe, Prime Minister Abe, invited us to a sukiyaki dining table with Japanese sake, and they discussed a lot, deep discussion about a lot, not only a bilateral relationship, but also a multilateral, security agenda and the trade agenda. That was 2019. So Mr. Abe, he made the best effort to strengthen the deterrence in this region, but also strengthen our strategic diplomatic capability vis-a-vis China. That's my conclusive remark before opening up the floor. So time is left, only 30 minutes. Please raise your hand if you want to make some question. Please. Identify yourself, sir, please.
Thank you so much for your great discussion. My name is Atsushi Okudera with Asahi Shimbun. My question is about the Japan-China relationships. Unfortunately, as you know, it is getting tension, getting worse since the last November. The Prime Minister Takaichi has mentioned that if China deployed a warship, it's a big surprise, by the way, and also taking a military action, it could be existential crisis for Japan. As you mentioned, Randy mentioned, the President Biden mentioned clearly, United States is going to defend Taiwan, not only once, maybe 4 times, something like that. But China didn't take the same action like this, That this time, seems like China reacting very, very overreactingly, and also they're trying to do something else. So 2 questions. Particularly to Randy. What is the Chinese objective? It seems like they're taking this opportunity, using this opportunity to do something different, and what they are trying to do. That's the first question. And also, on Takaichi's address, what is the observation of the Trump administration? How Trump administration exactly thinking about Prime Minister Takaichi's reaction or her address on existential crisis? Do you think, particularly for you, Prime Minister Takaichi has to retract her address? Many people said, should not. But if she should not, how Prime Minister Takaichi and Japan deal with this kind of situation? What is the, and also what is the observation of the Trump administration's intention on this crisis? Thank you.
Randy, please.
I think I heard about 6 questions in there, too. But let's see. So why did the Chinese respond so harshly? I think you used the opportunity, the phrase, why did they take the opportunity to do this? And I do think they're opportunistic. I mean, her statement was actually a pretty reasonable statement in response to a question in the Diet that was very particular to a scenario, and it was in the context of supporting the United States if the TRA was invoked. So what I think the Chinese are really concerned about, Japan doubling its defense budget, Japan reinterpreting Article 9, maybe revising Article 9, Japan entering counter-strike capabilities into the force, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there was a lot building up that China felt as though they wanted to put a shot across the bow of Japan. And also, Prime Minister Takaichi was brand new in the job. And so it was very concerning to them that the statement was made so soon in her tenure, and they wanted to do what they thought they could do to try to rein her back in. I think the surprise that they got was the very tepid response from the White House. Ambassador Glass made, I think, a pretty good statement, but it was slow from the White House. And then the strongest statement came from the State Department podium, also in response to a question. So in my view, we were a bit negligent in terms of standing up for our ally. I mean, for crying out loud, they had a consul general threaten her life, which is totally unacceptable and totally out of bounds of normal diplomacy and should have been called out as such. In no way should she retract the statement. Again, it was a reasonable one, and if you start to make concessions and start to retract things, it will be an endless stream of requests for the Chinese for you to address their grievances. It's possible to move on, though, and I think that's what we should do. And I think from Washington's perspective, not my perspective, but I think the Trump administration's perspective is they're in the middle of a tariff truce and they want to do more and say less. So I think they're going to encourage a lower profile in many instances, but the actual work, the things that are very consequential taking place in our alliance will continue.
Morrison, do you want to add anything to what he said now? Any comment on the? It's really a subtle issue, it's this Takaichi's address on the Diet.
Yes, I think the White House statement saying that the United States can have good working relationship with China and also a strong alliance with Japan is at the moment, I think, the best kind of statement that we would get from the United States. And I think the reason why we were able to secure that statement was because we were successful in stabilizing the relationship with the United States through some of the tariff negotiations and ongoing consultations on the defense side as well. So keeping up this good sort of engagement with the Trump administration is very, very important for Japan to be able to tackle this situation where China is stepping up pressure on Japan. And also, I think what we need to look out is, what kind of new Chinese activities will unfold during this crisis. Because back in 2012, they started intruding into the Senkaku territorial waters. And even though the diplomatic tension receded, they remained, they continue carrying out that kind of those activities. So if Chinese are going to sort of step up and use this as a sort of a reactive, assertive action and change it into a new normal, then I think on our part there should be a sort of a quiet response in that regard by activating or reinvigorating some of the military exercises that we carry out in the area as well. So that would be my response.
Thank you very much for additional wisdom. Any question, please? So let me go to Sir first, and then Frank. I want to combine the two questions.
Rupert Hammond Chambers with the US-Taiwan Business Council. This is to Randy, but certainly to all three of you. Just to point out a fact, since 2020, the United States has not sold anything to Taiwan that doesn't fit this so-called asymmetric approach to Taiwan's defense, a single focus on a single domain, a D-Day style kinetic attack on the island. But I think this excellent crowd would all agree that Taiwan faces a multi-domain challenge. But US security assistance is not providing a multi-domain approach to that challenge. It's providing a single domain challenge approach to that challenge. Randy and others, what should we do moving forward? If that is in fact the reality, does the US now need to inject more strategic clarity about our intentions if we're going to deny Taiwan the ability to force modernize in certain areas because it does not fit our narrow approach of what they need? Do we need to fill those areas increasingly as Taiwan's own capabilities degrade? Thank you.
So next question, Frank.
Thanks so much, Masa. Frank Chinusi with the Mansfield Foundation. A question for Matsukawa-san. You referred to Japan's need to strengthen relations with other security partners. You mentioned South Korea, Philippines, and others. I want to push a little bit on the issue of trilateralism. President Biden with Prime Minister Ishiba and President Yoon accomplished, I think, something significant in formalizing a trilateral security dialogue and strategic partnership. And as Randy mentioned, we have seen some hopeful signs of defiance of gravity with the new leaders in all three countries seeming to wish to sustain this. But I'm curious about your assessment of the sustainability of trilateralism, especially with a US president who seems to prefer either unilateralism or perhaps bilateral action and maybe less enthusiastic about multilateralism.
Okay, thank you very much. We have only 5 minutes to go. So your answer and the conclusive remark, and then next to Matsukawa Sensei and Mr. Morrison. You can conclude the whole this session, please.
Thank you. Well, I'll be brief to Rupert's excellent question. When you talk to friends in Taiwan, they'll say this is our dilemma of D-Day versus every day. And I think you rightfully point out the emphasis has been on the D-Day scenario, and we've really been directive in security assistance, and we've restricted investments in other areas. So I think two things. I think, number one, we have to pay attention to the everyday, because I think they're actually linked. If you allow coercion to go unchecked and incremental salami slicing till they're closer and closer to Taiwan, ironically, you actually make D-Day more likely, not less likely. But I also think for the well-being and the confidence and the resilience of Taiwan, addressing the everyday in the gray zone is appropriate, and I would definitely extend that to U.S. security assistance, opening the aperture further than it has been open for a while. And in terms of strategic clarity and the U.S. filling the gap, I'm in favor of that as well. I think that's another way to say the United States is prepared across domains to fill in gaps where, just as a capacity issue, not necessarily any kind of political commitment. You know, we have a law in the books that says we must maintain the capacity to resist force. It's not an option. It's not a policy choice. It's a law. And so if there are gaps, I think the United States should be willing to step in and say we can provide those capabilities if the political decisions are made to come to Taiwan's defense.
Thank you. Matsukawa Sensei.
Frank, thank you so much for the question. It's a very good question, actually, because it's it's an agenda that we have to tackle. But fortunate thing is, I think as you've seen in Nara, Japan, I think the Prime Minister Takaichi and President Lee Jae-myung both are very realistic, pragmatic, and also strategic leader. I think they do understand the needs for the cooperation between Japan and South Korea, but also with the United States. It's the biggest ally and only ally for both Japan and South Korea. And for the deterrence in this region, without US, it's impossible for the moment. I mean, not for the moment, forever maybe. So I think my answer is we two countries, Japan and South Korea, can work together to make President Trump be interested and engaged in this trilateral Japan-US and South Korea. But another fortunate thing is, I think President Trump, I think we have a lot of room for improvement in terms of making him more interested in this trilateral. That being said, I think our governments, Ministry of Defense, Foreign Affairs, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and then the military to military corporations among 3 countries are very strong. So as Mori-sensei said, I think we should do a lot for like military drills, exercises, to responding to new normalcy by China. We shouldn't make it a new normalcy. We have to degrade it. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mori-sensei.
Yes, so on Taiwan security, I think on the unilateral front, the Squad framework will be very important, I think, playing in the military exercise and training area as well. At the gray zone area, I think we have to think about where Taiwan would be 5 or 10 years down the road if the current kind of coercion campaign continues, and sort of identify not only the military realm but also the economic and also other food, energy, various kinds of areas where Taiwan's resilience needs to be boosted. And I think there should be a sort of a multinational effort to sort of boost that kind of resilience. And on the conventional side, Japan is definitely going to increase its defense capabilities. And I think Japan, by doing that, should turn into a sort of a security provider for the region. This is, I think, the transformation that Japan is now undertaking. Until now, Japan and the United States has focused pretty much on the defense of Japan. So we used to talk about American spear and Japanese shield, right, in the context of the narrow context of defense of Japan. But Japan is increasingly assuming the spear role in its own defense. And by doing that, it's freeing up US forces that have been previously earmarked or allocated for the defense of Japan and allow it to concentrate more on Taiwan. So what's happening is we're doing a sort of a function-based division of labor to a theater division-based division of labor, where Japan's going to be focusing and more sufficient and effective in defending its own capabilities, and thereby allowing US forces to concentrate on the defense of Taiwan. And by doing that, I think Japan is going to enhance regional security. So I hope we sort of reach that kind of state 5-10 years down the road through this new revision of the strategic documents. So I'll end there.
Thank you. Perfect. Clock in front of me is now saying only 50 seconds now. First, I have to apologize, and I talk a lot, and my poor English is maybe gave you some difficulty to understand what I'm saying. That's my first apology. But over that, and the very, very nice discussion, and the fruitful discussion, and the constructive dialogue, and a lot of wisdom, and a lot of food for thought in the future. So I just want to clap my hands to these 3 panels and please, panelists. Thank you very much for also great questions. Thank you.